I'm sorry I'm a little bit late, but welcome. I appreciate everyone who made the time to come and join us because we are excited to be doing our virtual leadership chat. And I, again, am the Staff Assembly Board President. Pronouns are she, her, and ella. And so I just want to go ahead and give an opportunity for those of us that are on the Staff Assembly, if you can just say your name, and then we'll just go by Alvin or Vice President, and then just by if you can pass it on to someone else, Alvin, because I just want people to know who is on the board and who's representing you all. And then we will go ahead and welcome our guests, Interim Vice Provost, Graduate Dean Chris Kello, and then as well as Director of Medical Education, Thelma Hurd. So I'll pass it over to you, Alvin.
Thank you. So as Yesenia mentioned, my name is Alvin Cha. I am this year's Vice President for Staff Assembly. I use pronouns he, him, his. And I will pass it over to our financial chairs, Vanessa and Lorena.
Hi everyone, my name is Lorena Magaña Aguilar. I'm the Finance Officer for Staff Assembly, and I'm going to pass it over to Vanessa.
Hi all and welcome. My name is Vanessa Hauser and I will pass it over. Ashley, you're up.
Hi, my name is Ashley Somerset and I am one of the co-chairs for events and outreach, and I'll pass it over to my other chair, Molly.
Good afternoon. My name is Molly Leisure and I am the newest member of the board. As Ashley said, the other co-chair for programs, events, and outreach. And throw it over to Ian.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ian Cook, and I'm the secretary for this year's Staff Assembly. And I'll pass that over to Austin.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Austin Jones. I am the co-chair for communications on the Staff Assembly board this year. And I'll pass it to my other co-chair, Brenda.
Hi everyone, this is Brenda Rojas and I'm the other co-chair for communications, and I'm not sure who hasn't gone yet.
I think that's everyone.
That's everyone?
It's me.
Priya.
You have a, yeah, I'm the past president. My name is Priya Lakurdi. I'm the past president. It's like, it's very certain. I don't do much, so it's easy to forget sometimes. But to this afternoon's meeting.
Perfect. Well, thank you. Thank you, everybody. So I'm going to actually, if it's all right, we will go ahead and again, welcome our guest panelists, and know that we're going to give you all, if you can, a few minutes to go ahead and do a welcome and an introduction so people get to know you a little bit more. And then we will move on. Myself and Molly will go ahead and take turns asking questions. We have pre-submitted questions. And then we will go ahead and hopefully at the end, if there's any opportunity for us to do last remarks that you all can do, that would be great. And then we'll go ahead and end at 2 o'clock. So then I'm gonna go ahead and pass it over to Interim Vice Provost and Graduate Dean Chris Kello. Please, if you can start us off.
Thank you, Sonia, and thank you everybody, the committee and all the staff for inviting me here today to join you and tell you a little bit about myself and answer some questions. So I think I'll start with the introduction. My name is Chris Kello. I am a professor of cognitive and information sciences. That's my title as when I joined UC Merced in 2008. I came here from George Mason University, where I was a professor, and I was also a program director at the National Science Foundation. Those are both in the Northern Virginia area in Washington, DC. Going further back, I'm from New York, and I was an undergraduate at the University of Rochester, and my PhD is from UC Santa Cruz. And that's where I learned to love California, and I'm so happy to be here back after being, going back and forth between the two coasts. And so since 2008, I've been involved in graduate education really from the very beginning. I was a chair of what was called the Graduate and Research Council at the time. We've since split those into two different councils, the Graduate Council and the Research Council. And that's on the Senate side, if you're all sort of familiar with how things are organized. So that's more on like the professor side, if you will. And pretty quickly, I started doing administration. So at that time, Dean Traina was the graduate dean, and he became the interim provost. And then I became the interim graduate dean after a very short stint of associate dean. That was in 2012 to 14. Then I went back as associate dean and continued my professor work, got to work with Dean Zatz and helped hire her here. And I'm so glad that we did, and she's been wonderful. And then of course, you may know that Dean Zatz has become the interim vice chancellor for research. So once again, the domino effect, and here I am as the now interim vice provost and dean of graduate education. And I've been doing this for almost a year now. So thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. I appreciate it. So we will go ahead and the Director of Medical Education, Dr. Thelma Hurd. Thank you. No, we can't hear you. Uh-oh.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me?
You know.
It's a pleasure to join you. I have, unlike Chris, I've been here a lot less time. I joined in November of 2019, and really this really is the culmination of about a long time migration across country, originally from the East Coast, and started learning about California when I was in Ohio for my fellowship training. Continued to move the wagon more westward from there, and then went down to Texas, where I've actually spent a good portion of my career, both at UT Southwestern in Dallas, MD Anderson for part of my training, and UT Health Sciences Center in San Antonio most recently before coming here. I've been, it's just an exciting time to be here. I wasn't clear to tell you about, it isn't the destination, it's the journey that counts. And I really, 20 years ago, I would have never seen myself doing this. But then experiences and opportunities happened, and it's just a pleasure to really join now and really being able to work with phenomenal people here on this campus at all levels to really do something that we're all committed to, which is improving health at a population level and creating a durable legacy in terms as a university to really training and addressing the healthcare workforce deficits. And it's what's really exciting. A lot of times these things occur where you have a small, sometimes microscopic nidus of people, but then you have whole communities, and be it in academia, outside of academia, that just don't get it. And that's not the case here. Everybody gets it. Everybody understands the challenges, and everybody wants to see this work and go forward. And that makes it an incredibly exciting time to be here and to work with really, really neat people.
Perfect. Thank you. So we're going to go ahead and start off. Molly will go ahead and start us off by asking the first question of Dr. Kello. Thank you.
All right, Dr. Kello. Many of our graduate programs, both master's and doctoral programs, are designed for full-time students. What would you say to a staff member who was interested in a program but could not participate in a full-time program due to work or personal obligations?
Yeah, thanks so much for that question. I did see it as in advance, and I did think about this. And my first reaction is talk to me, talk to the graduate group chair of the program that you're interested in, and let's see if we can work something out. Because it is true that the programs that we have here have started out primarily as full-time, I guess you could say academic programs, right, as opposed to professional degree programs. Now, I'm going to pause there and say that we are bringing some professional degrees online that are more designed for people who are working while they're getting their degree. So we have a master's in management. We're going to have a master's in public health coming up soon. And I think that's partly an answer to another question. And those are probably going to be more designed for people who are working while they're getting their educations. Now, it is true, the academic programs, so they're designed for people who are full-time. However, a lot of those programs have a fairly small number of courses that are required, and then a large amount of apprenticeship, and that tends to be quite flexible in terms of your training. So it is possible that if you found out what courses you need to take, when they're available. And then I'm gonna say one more thing, and given COVID and everything moving to remote instruction and some of it being asynchronous, meaning that you don't have to be at a particular time and place when you're in the course, that might continue as we get beyond COVID, at least to some degree. And I think faculty have become a little bit more open to the idea that people are going to be remote or asynchronous. And so I would hope that we could work something out on perhaps in those cases on a case-by-case basis. That's my answer. I'm sticking to it.
Thank you.
Thank you for that thorough response. I think that's really helpful for staff to know. Also, the fact that your availability is, I think, something that's hopefully going to motivate staff or others to reach out to you. So thank you for that.
Can I follow up and say that we have office hours? So contact me, but we also have look for office hours, and that's a great time to not only talk to me, but to the staff and ask these kinds of questions. I should have said that. So just look for our office hours. We post them, we broadcast them on email, and please come on by.
Perfect. Hopefully one of our staff assembly board members could look for that to put it into the chat. That would be helpful. Great. So I have one question that I was going to mention. If you wanted to elaborate a little bit more, Dr. Hurd, in this question, some folks wanted to know a little bit more about you, especially because you've been in the campus for, I think, a shorter time. Folks just wanted to know, they're interested in your career leading up to UC Merced. Can you share some of the history and what you've learned throughout the years? If there was anything else that you wanted to share with the group, that would be great.
I'll start with the punchline first. There's a couple of them. One, take advantage of opportunities that are serendipitous opportunities have more impact on your career than anything else. We just don't realize it. Number two, the best opportunities always come disguised in overalls. Number three, enjoy the journey, because a lot of times where you think you're headed and what your 10 or 15 or 20-year plan looks like, if you're open to new experiences, can really lead to other opportunities that take you places that you really never dreamed of. So that's the punchline. In terms of my experience, I like Dr. Kello, like Chris, are originally from the East Coast, and so my journey has been one, way back. I'm a first gen in my family on either side to be a physician. I understand. I really was. I had an opportunity to participate in a high school program it's called Future Physicians. And I only went to it because my best friend dragged me to it, kicking and screaming. And then I saw a lab rat in a clinical medical research lab, and what was going on with this rat with metabolism was the study. And all of a sudden, I got really interested in medicine. I started out. My journey started in community college, and so I went to community college in New Jersey, and really, it was fantastic. I'm a firm, full believer in the experiences that community colleges can offer you. Then went on to my undergraduate school and had a different type of adventure there in terms of really being, it's just a totally different culture, and really being able to embrace that culture. And and during that particular time, let's see, my community college was Union College in Cranford, New Jersey. My undergrad was Brown University in Rhode Island, and the biggest contribution was they taught me how to think a little bit differently, like very differently. Then went back home to medical school, and then in New Jersey, which is now called Rutgers, and then decided I really wanted to be an oncologist and wanted to be a surgical oncologist. So then pursued and did my residency there, and then went to Ohio State, and then ultimately MD Anderson for my oncology training. Practiced for a long time. I don't know, maybe 2+ decades, but I'm still 39 and holding. And and then really became very involved. I've always had a research lab throughout my entire career. I did transition from translational lab. I had a translational lab that I did in addition to running a faculty practice in academics for about 10 years of my career. And then decided I was very interested in really improving healthcare at a population level and moved into health disparities and specifically public health and really focusing on health equity issues. And then really realized that the challenge was not, sorry, Chris, the challenge was not in the mouse colony. The challenge was really changing health at a population level so you could decrease morbidity and mortality, especially among high needs populations and minority populations and rural populations, and really looking at different ways to deliver health care. And that really became my passion. So that's everything in a nutshell.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. So, Dr. Kello, what excites you about your role as dean of your department?
Grad students, excuse me, of course, it's the graduate students. It's all about the students. It is, now that starts more from, I think, when I was associate dean for 4, 5, almost 6 years. I worked directly with the students on professional development, helping them get through their programs, learn what it means to be a graduate student, and then learn what it means to do research. Now, a lot of that, of course, is happening with their advisors, in their programs. They're getting help from their peers. But in the grad division, my role was to provide sort of a more overview and general support and advice and resources. And watching graduate students succeed, there's just nothing more gratifying. Of course, this is equally true on the undergraduate side, but since you're asking me as a graduate dean, I'll focus on the graduate students. For one of the highlights would be like the grad slam competition. So I don't know if everybody, I see some heads nodding. So this is a 3-minute, 3-slide, give it your best pitch of your research. And it's sort of a competition that we have on campus, and then at the campus-wide level, students win pretty good prize money. We have a ton of support for it. And just watching them grow, and from the beginning when they're sort of tentative and trying to figure out how do I put a presentation together and make this work, to the end when eventually we have what's called a campus champion, it's just the best. Now, as a graduate dean, I still work with the students quite a bit, but of course I'm more involved with the graduate divisions and the workings writ large, budgets and so on. And in that context, it's working with the staff now. So the staff in the grad division have become for me, hi Lorena, I see Lorena right there, family to some extent. I mean, I've been in the grad division one way or another, really since I got here. Even when I was chair on the Senate side, I was working with grad division staff back then. And then as you heard my story, and so some of the staff, Eric Cannon, Sue Ya, colleague Concannon, who's now in the Ombuds, these are people I've been working with since 2008. And it's really quite something to be a member of a team like that. And it's something that I'll wrap it up, is that as a professor, so you know, some professors, some areas of research are very team-based, but very often it's a little bit more, you know, you working closely with 1 or 2 students and, you know, on a particular project, and it's not, doesn't have that sort of team spirit necessarily. It can, but not always. For me, I learned what that meant to be, you know, to be working with a team, I think most in terms of working with the graduate division staff. And that has been a great joy and pleasure for me.
Perfect.
Again, my answer, I'm sticking with it.
Thank you. I appreciate your energy and your response as well. That's also something that I think it's helpful to know that you're still very passionate. That's how I'm feeling about the work that you've done and are doing. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Let me say that that's a comment I get often. I do bring the energy. You know, when I'm the MC for the Grad Slam competition, that's kind of my job. You know, I'm the Ryan Seacrest of the competition, basically. So I gotta bring that energy. And my student evaluations for my courses, the word enthusiasm is almost like every single evaluation. So I guess I do that. I am very enthusiastic about what I do. So
Perfect. Thank you. So Dr. Hurd, one of the questions that we have that was submitted is, can you, how are things currently progressing with the medical education program here for UC Merced? If you can share some of that information and maybe some collaboration that you've done with the 3 schools would be great.
So this is, wow. So there's been a lot of work and a lot of progress over the year, but especially in terms of the 3 institutions working to, when you say 3 schools, do you mean our 3 schools of engineering, SNS, and Shaw?
Yes. Yes.
Ah, okay. All right. So this is really a very exciting, actually one of the exciting aspects of our growing. There's always been a strong history with public health in terms of participating and integrating public health professors into the seminar series for the Bridges curriculum to really address health disparities. What has happened over the past, what has really happened and how this is expanding is that with the funding, with the state funding of the medical education, with the sustained 15 million annually to be shared with our 3 institutions to build a medical education program, and ultimately joint regional campuses of the UCSF School of Medicine, it's enabled us to really reach out to colleagues at the School of Natural Sciences. When we first got funded, I needed to choose a second person who would really be able to help to really build this program and really build a medical education with the transition to a regional school. And so with that, I asked Betsy Jamont, the Dean of the School of Natural Sciences, along with her school, to join in this endeavor so that we would be able to really build this. We've been able to reach out. That subsequently has led to expanded partnerships with the School of Engineering, specifically building relationships with their biomedical engineering program. And also in terms of Shaw, looking not only in expanding public health, but reaching out to look at sociology and some of the other social sciences that are really a very important part of holistic medical education. So these relationships are developing. If you, in addition to that, in terms of how we are growing, I'd like to, are you able to offer a share screen or no with this particular call? Okay.
Yeah, Alvin?
I have I'll start talking about it. I actually have a schematic that shows where we actually stand right now with our different projects. And I can start talking around.
You can share, Dr. Hurd, if you want to share your screen. I've set it up. So.
Lovely. Okay, hold on. Share screen. Okay, we got that part. Let me just look at. Hold on. Almost there. 2. Oh, it's not letting me do that. I'm sorry. Hold on a second. There's technologic hope.
Take your time. Thank you.
Let's see. Oh, here it is. Okay, I have it. Excuse me. I'm almost technical. Not quite yet. Okay. So if you can look at this, this is can you see medical education initiatives? Okay, great. So what we can see right now is this is a hybrid type of diagram, but it's actually showing what we're doing. As you all know, as many of you may know, that the program is embedded into the Office of the Provost and Executive Vice Chancellor, i.e. Greg Schaap. What we are doing is we have convened a medical education advisory committee that will be meeting this month for the first time, and we waited so that we had enough of a foundation to support activities for the advisory committee to advise on, to be very honest with you. We hope to convene a community advisory board sometime in 2022. It will be, the timing will really depend upon how the internal one is really developing and the types of initiatives that are moving forward. We are going to be developing with this year's appropriations from the state. We now will be bringing on a person to start building a high school pipeline program specifically focused on medical education that complements and will work with our existing high school activities, but really takes this to add a different component in terms of developing academic programs like science and math for high school students, so that when our students come to NUSED who are interested in pre-med, they will have an enriched science and math background. This program with the SJV expansion, I've already been talking about. Career advising, we are currently, the School of Natural Sciences has two pre-health advisors. We are planning to bring on academic success advisors who will work with the School of Natural Sciences, and together really provide highly targeted medical, pre-medical, and ultimately pre-health science advising, but starting out really with a strong pre-medical focus. We have started a website, the Medical Education Collaborative, chosen as such so that it really will encompass both medical education and health sciences. We currently participate in the Align, which is the seminar series that I spoke about with public health, as well as moving into Aspire, which is a summer research program that promotes undergraduate, defined as medical students, combined hopefully with undergraduate students, to develop research projects that can be done either within a summer or potentially longitudinally. We will be working, UCSF Fresno has now started their clinical training for SJV Prime students for the entire 2 years or last 30 months of training, of their med school training, and we anticipate being able to work with that program, providing research experiences with our faculty here at UC Merced. In terms of undergraduate programs, we started an MCAT prep program with partnering with Kaplan, as well as the Pine Set Student Empowerment, which was started by Andre Pineset, who's an anesthesiology faculty at Stanford, to really provide 360 MCAT type of preparation for students. We are currently offering that course free because of COVID and the difficulty, that COVID, we all know the difficulties that COVID has presented for our students. This is a program that we are underwriting jointly with the Provost Office. We are working with the School of Natural Sciences, as well as Sarah Fry, who's the VC for undergraduate education, in developing, along with the faculty of science, to develop a learning assistance program, so that it's part of a two-pronged approach to be combined going forward with supplemental instruction, so that we can really increase our student success and truly prepare our students for, not truly, but more broadly address preparation of our students for success in both health sciences and science careers, as well as medical. In terms of special projects, we partnered with the SOSA and the and the career centers, and together we have just launched the Lead Pre-Health Leadership in the 21st Century seminar series. This is a pilot, and bringing in leaders from across the region, from healthcare entities. Our first external people this Friday, actually, we will be hosting we'll be hosting the vice president for I am so sorry. I'm hosting the vice president who's in charge of academic program for Kaiser Permanente, and I'm sorry, I'm blocking on his last name. His first name is Calvin, and that doesn't help you. I will have it by the end of the talk, or by the end of the session, as well as Carrie Byington from UC Health to talk about challenges of healthcare delivery in the era of COVID and the 21st century. We are partnering with Livingston Health to develop a clinical research project program so that our students will be able to rotate and get clinical research experience. UC Berkeley has reached out to develop an eye vision project. This is as a result of COVID. We are now co-leading with HSRI, the UC Merced component of the Activate project, which is reaching out and working with Livingston Health with the goal to form a regional network for telehealth for FQHCs. And finally, we have developed, this was pre-COVID, we were ready to launch in June, but COVID fixed that, we'll delay it, a Mercy Medical Center rotation. We are retiring the shadowing concept and really replaced it with a rotation in which our undergraduate students would be able to join the family practice residents and have a clinical third-year rotation, like experience that's been adapted to meet the HIPAA compliance regulations. And this is a program that is fully supported by the CEO, as well as and the National Office for Dignity Health, which is which owns and runs Mercy Medical Center, is aware of this particular initiative. So that, in a nutshell, is what we're currently doing.
Wow, very important.
And let me give Bill that.
I appreciate the detail, all the information. Thank you, Dr. Hurd. That was really helpful for me. Someone who hasn't necessarily been up to date on everything that's happening. It seems that it seems that the pandemic is not stopping or slowing down this process. So that's something that's really exciting to hear, that that you're adapting and moving and still pushing forward this. So for sharing that information.
Thank you,
Molly. Thank you.
Yeah. So we actually have a question that has come in for Dr. Kello during the session. So we'll turn to that one. So Dr. Kello, what are some of the priorities and goals from your predecessor, Dr. Zatz, that you are continuing to work on? And what are some of your own vision and goals that you hope to work towards during your time?
Sure. So one of the biggest priorities for the graduate division here at UC Merced is to help us get towards our status, and this is a priority, was a priority for Dean Zatz, certainly is a priority for me. So for everybody to know what that means, that means highest research category for a university. It's called the Carnegie classification. And how you are two, so we're one step underneath R1, our UC sister campuses are all R1. And it takes time to get there, but the two main components are research expenditures and doctoral degree conferrals. So the graduate division is very directly involved in doctoral degree conferrals and indirectly involved in research expenditures, in the sense that much of the research that goes on campus is directed by the faculty as PIs, principal investors, but most of those projects are involving graduate students, often in labs, in the field, in the libraries, sort of doing the work. They're really the heart of the research enterprise here at UC Merced and at any research university. So getting our doctoral degree conferrals to that, heading towards and becoming R1 will was a priority and will be a priority for probably a decade more. So that's a very large scale priority. Diversity is a priority. Now, of course, that was a priority for Dean Zatz. It's a priority for me. Maybe what I'll do is, in this context, give you a little sense of the slightly, maybe I am approaching that. And it's very consistent with what Dean Zatz did, but it has a little bit of some of my own initiatives. So I'm currently a principal investigator, speaking of, on a grant from NSF, National Science Foundation, advancing graduate education in the professoriate, AGEP. Now, just to chase, this is about diversifying the faculty, the professors at community colleges, at CSUs, at UCs, across the board. So we know, maybe you all don't know, but we know in higher education that as you go sort of further up in higher education in terms of academic training from undergraduate to graduate, master's, doctoral, faculty, diversity goes on. And this is something that higher education has been saying for, I'd say, at least 20 years, but more, but very concentrated efforts for the past 20 years. So our program we're trying to do is our diverse students, and I'll mention something. We have a very, we're actually the best among the 10 UCs in terms of the diversity of our graduate students. What we're trying to do in this program that I'm PI on is help them get faculty jobs, help them get postdoctoral positions, because of what I just mentioned, that diversity goes down as you go up in academia. We're trying to undo that trend. And so the program is a partnership with a couple of CSUs, Fresno State and Channel Islands, and between UC and Santa Barbara, all basically involved in helping our students, our doctoral students, who are interested in careers, especially careers that might stay in the Central Valley, at Hispanic serving institutions, whether they be at a UC. By the way, 6 of the UCs are Hispanic serving institutions. Of course, we're one of those. Or at a Cal State or at a community college. Most of the Cal States are Hispanic serving. Most of the community colleges, certainly in the Central Valley, are Hispanic serving. And we want to see our students get jobs there. And so without going into the details, we have a 5-year program for putting what we call an administrative model in place to basically get our students advancing through the pipeline, as we call it. So that one has now become multiple efforts. So one of the larger initiatives that I'm working on, and the provost, by the way, is also involved in some of these efforts because we're both partnering on this, is building partnerships between the UC campuses and the Cal State, specifically in the Central Valley, so that we can enhance the diversity of the pipelines in both directions now. So the project I just mentioned is more heading from our doctoral students to professor jobs, but we also want to get our diverse students in the Central Valley, perhaps they're at a Cal State, and maybe they're interested, but they don't know much about grad school. They might not even really know the opportunities that we have here at UC Merced. So we are working on initiatives and partnerships to recruit, better prepare those students to come to UC Merced and other UCs, of course, as well, to enter into graduate programs, be they master's programs, doctoral programs, and hopefully, for some of them, move on to postdocs and faculty positions as well. So maybe I'll pause there, because I could keep going. There's lots more initiatives that we have, but I think that's probably one of the biggest initiatives, is building out partnerships. I think the Central Valley has so much to offer for higher education, and I think putting UC Merced here, it was such a huge step. But I think the next step is to start working together with other institutions around the valley, and so that's what we're doing.
Great, thank you.
I know it's about 1:43. We're going to be running out of some time. We did have quite a number of questions, general questions, but I think it might be helpful to get, we'll start off with you, Dr. Hurd, and then maybe Dr. Kello, in regards to normal will never be the same as it was pre-COVID. How will teaching, research, growth, change in the areas that you oversee be impacted? Now, potentially, we might be going back to, going back on campus, or as things continue to, just change with the pandemic and so forth. If you can share some insight about that. We'll start off with Dr. Hurd and then Dr. Kello. We can't hear. No, we still can't hear you, Dr. Hurd.
Is Dr. Hurd muted? I don't think so, actually.
Yeah, it doesn't look like you're muted.
Can you hear me
but-
now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Can we start with Dr. Kello first? Would you be?
Perfect.
I'm saying that because you have a whole science talk. I mean, you're right at the front line with this.
Yeah. So the question is the new normal. I'm just making yes, right?
Yeah. What is the new normal going to look like now? You know, we're not going to go back to pre-COVID. So can you just share how will teaching, research, growth change in the area that you oversee?
So I think some things we really need to get back to the old normal, and some things we're learning will work as good, if not better, possibly, you know, more efficient, cheaper, easier in some respects. And so let me try to give you some sense of those two categories. So the things that we need to get back to normal in the graduate side is all of the lab training, the field work training, some of it's hands-on and some of it's, you know, very just working in the community. So we have a lot of community-based research, for example. All of that, I mean, there's just no alternative. We must get back to a normal in the sense of being able to interact in person, and we're working towards it. I mean, there are measures, risk mitigation factors we can take along the way. So for example, you may all know that research activity is back on campus to some degree with risk mitigation factors, 25% density, and on and on and on. So I hope that we don't stay that way, that you know, we're making do, but it slows the graduate students down, it slows the research enterprise down. So we're just gonna have to make do and keep working towards normal. Okay, now let's talk about now some of the stuff that is maybe gonna be part of our new normal. Right off the bat, I mentioned office hours. We have had much more attendance, much better communication and dissemination of information by remote office hours as opposed to in-person office hours. I do not plan on ever doing in-person office hours again. They don't make it, the reason is for somebody to come and make their way, maybe they have to, you know, maybe they weren't planning on being on campus, or they were planning on being on campus, but they weren't planning on going all the way, you know, taking their lunch hour and having to walk 10, 15 minutes up and walk up to the, and they just want a 5 or 10 minute question. So much easier to just get on Zoom. And then everybody gets the answer at the same time. And you can have other people, you know, more than one person in the office, so to speak, to help out with answers. So that type of interaction, I don't see that's going to be part of the new normal. Here's another one. So our professional development, that for when I was associate dean, we created a 1-credit course called Graduate Professional Development. And a big part of that course is our panels of experts that we bring into the course so that the graduate students can see, for example, different career paths or get different kinds of advice for different kinds of fellowships, different kinds of, you know, academic and non-academic kind of career, I already said career paths, but getting those panelists to be in person for that course was nearly impossible. Of course, I could get the local panelists, but a lot of times it's really valuable for students to get advice and hear from people around the country and around the world. And of course, we have conferences for that kind of thing. They're very expensive. They take a lot of time and effort on everybody's part. There's still value in having conferences in person, of course. But when it comes to like, hey, we're doing a panel, I'll give you a quick example. We're doing a panel, and it would be great if, so I was a program officer at the National Science Foundation. We're going to be doing panels on public sector jobs for graduate students, including government jobs, private foundations as well. Basically, not nonprofits, for example. I have contacts at Washington, D.C. It's impossible for me to try to get them to come to UC. We do that when we can, but it was so easy. We put together panels that are going to be coming up in the next month or two from people all around the country, easily, cheaply, and it's going to be of great value to those students to have those panelists on Zoom. We've done a lot of panels now on Zoom. They work fine. That's a mode of interaction that we've actually added value by being able to get people so much easier to show up, you know, on Zoom for a panel I don't think we're going to change. I think we're going to stay that way for that type of interaction. I think we've actually learned something that we do not need to be, burning a bunch of fossil fuel on planes just to, do a panel type of thing. So, and then you can probably by analogy get a sense of, think of other types of activities where we're all learning how to do this. Look what we're doing right now. I mean, when we started this was uncomfortable. I did panels like this for when we were doing research relaunch, I told you about, where we had to, set up research on campus. It was hard for everybody. I'll speak for myself. It was very hard for me. The cognitive workload, now I'm talking like a cognitive scientist, can handle this and looking at the chat and looking at everybody and trying to feel, I was overwhelmed. It was exhausting.
Thank you.
It's not exhausting. I don't know about you all. I don't find it exhausting anymore. So we kind of, this type of interaction, we kind of learned how to do. And I think it'll work just fine for certain things.
Yeah, it's great acknowledgement. Thank you. Appreciate you sharing that that insight and those reminders, right? That we can change how we, did some things in the past, and it doesn't mean that it's not as effective or as helpful for folks. So perfect. So maybe for Dr. Hurd, the question again, what are your views on a normal for the UC Merced when the campus reopens? How's that? Thoughts about
I
that?
hate to say this, but it's a resounding ditto to what Dr. Kello just said. The only thing that I would say is that I think the changes that clinical training has gone the same types of challenges and is coming back in hybrid forms. I think clinically people have realized you don't need some space-based hours upon end, and that you can really look at types of activities as well as synchronous activities. And I think that telemedicine is here to stay and really offers a lot of opportunities for training. It's opening up new avenues for medical scribes. It's opening up new avenues, in new roles. I think it's really put the emphasis on what community health workers need to really be looking like here in California. We're almost as progressive as Texas and Massachusetts, but we're getting there. So I think that, pretty much everything that Dr. Kello said is true for the campus. I think as we, especially I think the other resounding word would be vaccination and testing. And the campus is certainly moving forward with that, with vaccination. Andy Boyd has been working very closely with UC System, UC Health, our chancellor, as well as the Department of Public Health, so that our school is starting up a vaccination program for our employees. And this will be starting actually initially this Friday. Details of this, let me just be very clear. I am giving overview. I am not the person in charge of implementing it. I'm simply here to describe it. So I would suggest, I think we'll be getting more on a quasi more serious note. We will be getting more information from Andy as this rolls out. He's really done a great job in putting together a vaccine program that has been really, really difficult to do for any number of reasons. I mean, this is a huge undertaking to put something like this together, and he really deserves kudos on it for this. So that's the nutshell of what I see changing.
Perfect. Thank you. A quick question that came in right now. I wanted to go ahead and ask Dr. Kello, could you share anything about where we are regarding the GRE, and if that's still were there any information on the GRE? And thank you, Dr. Hurd.
Oh, that's an interesting question. Yeah, so for everybody's benefit, so this is the graduate exam. It's like the SAT or the ACT, but for graduate school, standardized test. And maybe some of you may have also heard the issues with SAT, ACT biases that are inherent in those tests. Well, those issues have also been found at the GRE level as well. And it's not just about the biases, it's also about whether those tests really do predict success and performance in undergrads or in graduate education. And again, the research suggests that they're not necessarily very good predictors. Okay, so now you take that and then COVID happens, and there's already a movement towards either not knowing, really, I don't think higher education really knew what we were going to do with these tests, but for a lot of people, just getting rid of them and going to a more holistic review, if you've heard of that phrase before. And now, I should say, graduate school has been doing holistic reviews since day one, but it included the GREs. Well, now COVID happens and students can't even get to test centers. They can't actually take the test. And the impetus was already there. So most programs here at UC Merced and around the country have done away very quickly with the GREs. And there's three options. You can still make it required. You can make it optional, or you can make your review process blind and say, we don't want your scores. If you give them to us, we're not going to look at them. We have all three here at UC Merced. So if I'm going to I might get my numbers a little wrong here, but we've got 2 programs still making the GREs required. We've got maybe 4 programs or 5 programs optional, and the rest have done away with it for this year at least. Now, I think all those programs are going to revisit. Oh, and I should say that there was a time when Dean Zatz was at the helm where we did require, up until very recently, the GREs for all of our programs at the campus level. So it was a graduate division requirement. That was done away with 2 years ago, I think. So we'd only recently been moving in that direction. So we made it optional for the grad programs to decide what they wanted to do with that. And then this year, everybody just said, okay, that's it. And so now, for example, our fellowship review process, so we take those admissions applications and we also review them for recruiting fellowships. That is completely blind to the GRE scores. Even if a student had them, maybe it was required for their program, or maybe it was optional and they decided to send them into that program, we have stripped them from the review process for our fellowships. And that is new as of this year. And I think this is definitely a continuing trend for higher education, both on the undergrad and grad side. Some are talking about still trying to come up with a standardized test, and I'll stop talking. Where the standardized test still has a lot of value, especially at the graduate education level, is for international applicants who are coming from countries where the education system, the GPA system, is so different that some standardization, so your apples and oranges type of problem, is still really valuable. So I don't know how this is going to play out, but there is still some need for some standardization, especially with international students. To be continued, we'll see.
Perfect. Just wanted to go ahead and end with actually a good note in regards to if you can share a fun activity or something that you do to distress, because one of the things is the staff and like yourself, staff, we're going through, a lot of stressors. So maybe if we can just end on that note, if you can just share one activity that you're doing to distress actively right now that you've been doing that during this pandemic, if you can share that. We'll start off with Dr. Hurd, and then we'll go ahead and end with you, Dr. Kello.
I guess one activity that we started with our group was Mocha Mondays, and basically where we just met casually for coffee, coffee, and just talk about anything but work and but COVID. But I think what I really thought to do was to create a work environment where it was okay to have to we're dealing with COVID and the work-life challenges and the home life challenges that it posed was acceptable and understood, and create an environment where people could really feel free to say, my son just has COVID, I'm really, what do we do now? Where people could say, I incorporated mental health. If somebody needed a mental health day, people are dealing with a lot of things outside of work, that it was an environment that was acceptable to say, I need mental health time. And so it was really creating an accepting environment that incorporated the limitations or the pressures that COVID induced. I looked at it more than drinking coffee.
Mhm.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing that. Dr. Kello?
So with respect to the graduate division, I think I will admit we haven't instituted a MOCA Monday. That would be cool. Maybe we need to do a MOCA Monday. But what we do is a lot of flexibility. Early on, we were doing a lot of check-ins with each other, yes, over Zoom, because in the beginning, everybody's day to day concerned about your physical health, your mental health, and we're still concerned. But I think we've just kind of settled into it. So those frequent check-ins, like health check-ins that we would do, have tapered off. I will say we had a holiday party on Zoom and we did trivia games on Zoom. Haven't done that. That's another thing that kind of works pretty well, like surprisingly well. They show little clips or play little audio clips and you try to figure out, you have teams, again, that I'm surprised how well that worked. So I will thumbs up for Zoom games. Now, finally, on a personal note, this is, I don't know about all of you, but I feel like my life has really become a treadmill. I often use that metaphor. I get up, I'm on the treadmill, I'm going, I'm doing this, and then done. Get up, do it again, and done, right? And so to try to break, because I'm not traveling, we're not mixing things up as much, right? You're isolated, quarantined. Walks, I mean, I gotta say, I have part of my treadmill activity is 5 o'clock, it's a dog walk with my wife. That's a big stress reliever for me to do that as part of my routine. Yeah.
Perfect. Well, thank you. Thank you both for joining us, and thank you for everybody that's still with us on this leadership chat. We're so excited, and hopefully folks can join us. My dog wanting to go for as well that just poked her nose in. But thank you everybody for joining us, and hopefully we'll see you all February 18th at 10 for our next regular general staff assembly meeting. So thank you again for both of you for joining us. Bye. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.